Hey guys, welcome to 5-Minute Math. This is Carrie Rhinehart. Today I'm going to be looking at finding roots and factors. This is from Algebra 2, Unit 2, Lesson 5, if you're following along in the text. So I'm going to show you how to find these and first we're going to start with what are roots and factors. So a root is just a fancy word for an x-intercept. Sorry, my pen's not wanting to work here. So root is just a fancy word for an x-intercept. So when we're looking at a polynomial function, when it's graphed, it could look like a lot of things, but I'm going to look at this one. Okay. A root or an x-intercept is wherever it crosses the x-axis. So in this case, I have 3 roots, 3 real roots. Now sometimes you can have imaginary roots, which actually means it's not crossing the x-axis, but we'll talk about that later. But notice where it crosses the x-axis at the roots, y equals 0. So we'll come back to that in a minute. But again, a root is just an x-intercept. So let's say that x equals, this is the ordered pair, -3, 0. Notice y is 0 there, but x is -3. So that is the root. X equals -3 is the root. Now, if I wanted to get this equal to 0, get everything on one side, I would add 3 to both sides, and I end up with x plus 3 equals 0. When it's in this form, when it's equal to 0, that is the factor that goes with the root x equals 3. So the root, -3. So the root -3, or x equals -3, and the factor x plus 3, those go together. So that's when you see roots and factors, or it says write it in factored form, they want you to find the roots and then get it equal to 0 to have it in factored form. All right, so how do we find these things? How do we figure out where it crosses the x-axis? Well, to find these, we want to know where y equals 0. Again, no matter where you cross the x-axis, y is going to equal 0. So just keep that in mind. Now, we talked about in the last unit, the last lesson, the rational root theorem. It gives you a list of all the possible rational roots. That's all the possible places it could cross the x-axis that are rational numbers. Now, that doesn't include irrational numbers and imaginary numbers. So what you would do, let's say that I have, I'll give you, let's see, f of x equals x squared plus 6x, actually let's make this x cubed, plus 6x squared plus x minus 4. Okay, let's list all the possible rational roots. Remember, it's plus or minus p over q, where p is all the factors of the constant 4. So all the factors of 4 would be 1, 2, and 4. And q is all the factors of the leading coefficient. Well, in this case, that's a 1, so that's just 1. So I'd put each of these numbers over 1. So 1 over 1 is just 1, 2 over 1 is just 2, and 4 over 1 is just 4. So the only possible rational roots for this function will be 1 or -1, 2 or -2, or 4 or -4. So one way to figure this out is to plug each of these in for x. And if you end up with it equaling 0 after you plug it in here, then you know that that's a root, because remember, if you plug it in and then you end up with 0, that's what y equals. F of x is the same as y, then that is a root. So we could plug it in. So let's try 1. 1 cubed plus 6 times 1 squared plus 1 minus 4. Okay, you can do it by hand, or you can type that into your calculator. You can also use your table feature on your calculator, or y equals, depending on which calculator you're using, and you plug this function, x squared plus 6x squared plus x minus 4, plug that in, and then you can go to your table and check all these values, 1, -1, 2, -2, etc. But for this one, I'm just plugging it in one at a time. So 1 cubed is 1, plus I get 6 times, 1 squared is 1, so 6 times 1 is just 6, plus just 1 minus 4. So I get 7, 8 minus 4 equals 4. So I know that positive 1 is not a root because it doesn't equal 0 when I plug it in. Okay, and then so I could keep doing this until I found a root. There may or may not, one of these may or may not be the correct solution. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and plug it into my table. So I'm going to type in x cubed plus 6x squared plus x minus 4. And then I'm going to go to my table and I'm going to put it on auto here because I'm only looking at whole numbers. And I'm going to check out -1. Well, -1, and if I plugged it in here by hand, when I do that, I do end up with 0. So I know that -1 is a root. So x equals -1 is one of the roots here. I'm also going to check out 2. 2, I end up with 30 when I plug it in. -2, I end up with 10. Okay, so none of those are working. And then I've got to check out 4 and -4. Okay, 4 and -4, neither one of those end up giving me 0. So the only rational root for this is the -1. All right, you also need to be able to write this as a factor. So x equals -1 as a factor is whenever I get it equal to 0. So I'd have to add 1 to both sides to get this equal to 0. So I'd end up with x plus 1 equals 0. So x plus 1 is factored form, and x equals -1 is the root. Okay, I'm going to continue and do a couple more methods for finding these roots and factors in the next video.